Morning, it's Helen Snell, meeting producer. I can confirm, Chairman, that we are now live and that you have the applicant and Councillor Bennett also joining the call. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Good morning and welcome to this virtual meeting of the West Area Planning Committee. Before consideration of today's business, I'll outline the protocols for the meeting. Today's meeting is being live streamed to the public. Sorry, I'll start again. Today's meeting has been live streamed to the public via Microsoft Teams and is also being recorded. When members are speaking, they may choose to use their video. If the council's live stream fails during the meeting and we cannot share the proceedings, I'll adjourn the meeting so that access can be restored. If the issue cannot be resolved, I'll halt the meeting and the remaining business will be concluded at a future date. If a member experiences a technical issue, I'll adjourn for a short period to try and re-establish their connection. As I call members to speak, I'll remind you to switch on your microphone. If for some reason you cannot be heard, the democratic officers will advise you. The vote will be taken by a roll call of committee members by the democratic officers. Members must be present for the duration of the discussion on each planning application in order to be able to vote. We have public speakers at the meeting today and they will be joining the meeting by telephone. Where a member has declared a non-registrable interest, a disclosable pecuniary interest, or any interest by virtue of any trade union membership in a matter, they must leave the virtual meeting. Their departure will be confirmed and they'll be invited to rejoin the meeting at the appropriate time. To confirm the procedure for today's meeting is that members of the committee who wish to speak on an item should indicate by using the raise your hand function, which is being monitored by the Vice Chair. Any member not on the committee or unable to use the raise your hand function who wish to ask a question should indicate by typing an X in the chat box. Before we start today's business, I'll ask the Democratic Services Officer to ask committee members to confirm they are present and state their electoral division. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. It's Angela Saunders here, the committee's clerk. I'll start with Councillor Bastin.
Good morning, John Bastin, Councillor for Constantine, Morning and Budop.
Councillor Biggs.
Yes, good morning, Dave Biggs, Councillor for Camborne Treswithian.
Councillor Duffin.
Joyce Duffin, Councillor for Mount Hawke and Portreath.
Councillor Eakin-Smith.
Good morning, Councillor David Eakin-Smith, Councillor for 11.
Councillor Harding.
Good morning again, it's Roger Harding, Newlyn Mousel Division.
Councillor Hurd.
Good morning, Councillor John Hurd for Camborne Pendorvis Division.
Councillor Kaczmarek.
Councillor Mark Kaczmarek, Cornwall Councillor for Caharet, Gwanep and St Day Division.
Councillor Martin.
Good morning, John Martin, Councillor for Helston South.
Councillor Nicholas.
Good morning, Councillor Sue Nicholas for Marazine and Perryn Division.
Councillor Pascoe.
Good morning, Councillor Lionel Pascoe for Gwynedd, Gwydion and St Earth.
Councillor Simmons.
Yes, good morning, Councillor Simmons for Moyler, East and Penryn. Moyler, sorry.
Councillor John Thomas.
Good morning, everyone. Councillor John Thomas, Electoral Divisional Member for Lanran and Stithians.
And Councillor Mike Thomas.
Good morning, everyone. Councillor Mike Thomas for the land of Helston North.
Thank you. I'll just outline which officers are here. We have Mark Ball and Matthew Stevenson from Planning, Ben Curnow from Legal, Hugh Gibbon from Highways, Nikki Manell from Affordable Housing, and Helen Snell is the meeting producer today. Thanks, Chairman.
Right, thank you. So the first item on the agenda are apologies for absence. Are there any apologies?
I haven't received any, Chairman.
Right, thank you. So we go on to item 2, that's declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest?
No hands, Chairman.
No, right, thank you. So we go on to item 3, that's the minutes of the meeting that was held on the 14th of December 2020. It's to confirm those minutes. They're on pages 1 to 7. I'll go through them page by page. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, and page 7. Would somebody like to move that they're true and accurate?
Move the minutes, Chairman.
Yeah,
Councillor
John Thomas, and we got a seconder. Yeah, Councillor Duffy, I can see there. So it's been moved by Councillor John Thomas and seconded by Councillor Joyce Duffy. So all those in favour, please show.
Yeah, it looks like that's been carried, Chairman, if everybody could lower their hands again.
Yeah, right. Okay, so with that, we go on to 4, which is applications for consideration today. There is only one item, and that is 4.1, which is PA 19/10381, Barrett David Wilson Homes. And I think you're taking us through that, Matt. Matt, can you hear me, Matt?
No, it'll be Mark Ball.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. All right. Good morning, Mark. Can you hear me?
I can, Chairman. Thank you.
Yeah. Are you sharing your screen with us? If
I am, yes.
Yeah.
Should
Just like try that first. Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. So over to you, Mark.
Thank you. This application was considered at the meeting of this committee held on the 16th of November last year, where it was resolved that it should be deferred to seek amendments to the scheme in relation to 2 issues. Firstly, to look to achieve a 10% biodiversity net gain on site, and secondly, to further assess the pedestrian access and traffic management related to the scheme, particularly around Kagelyak. So this application seeks full planning permission for the erection of 133 dwellings, including 47 affordable homes, which is 35% provision, with associated access, estate roads, car parking, infrastructure and open space on agricultural land off Hillhead Road to the west of Falmouth. The key issues that need to be considered are the suitability of the location of the site for residential development, layout, scale, design, appearance, landscaping and impact on the character of the area, highway and access issues, potential impacts upon neighbour amenity, affordable homes, public open space, education and health infrastructure, ecology, including biodiversity net gain, flood risk and surface water drainage and foul drainage, potential impacts upon European protected site, archaeology and potentially contaminated land. So the site is located to the west of Falmouth as a single field used for agricultural purposes. The site's hatched and edged in red there. Just for orientation purposes, we have Falmouth down here in the south to the southwest. We have the A39 Penryn bypass here. This is Hillhead Road here, Kagelyak Road here, Penryn to the north. The site is not designated for any landscape reason and it's not within a conservation area. There are a small number of existing dwellings to the north and east, a covered reservoir to the west, and Hillhead Road runs along the southern boundary. There are 2 public footpaths in the vicinity, and that's the blue dots here. This aerial photo shows the context of the site. The site's agricultural land on the edge of Falmouth with existing and proposed residential development to the north and east and south and other agricultural land to the west. We can see down here, here's the application site. This is the land which is currently under construction, a number of dwellings under construction there, known as the Eve Park development. We have existing residential development here, small number of dwellings located to the north of the site here, and then agricultural land surrounding the site here. This is the Falmouth and Penryn strategy map of the Cornwall site allocations development plan document. This plan shows the allocations and the existing commitments for both Falmouth and Penryn. The application site forms part of an allocation identified as FPH3 within that document. It's a residential development intended to provide for the housing needs of Falmouth as set out in the Cornwall local plan. The site has therefore previously been assessed and found to be suitable for residential development in principle. So this is the site here which forms part of this larger allocation. And we can see a number of other large allocations in the vicinity as well. This slide shows FPH3 allocation within the site allocations DPD. The application site comprises the westernmost field of the allocated land as indicated on that slide. The FPH3 allocation covers an area of approximately 8.8 hectares in total and is intended to provide approximately 200 dwellings. Now this slide shows the wider master plan for the whole of the allocation. The first phase of development in the easternmost part of the allocation has relatively recently been completed and has provided 104 dwellings, and that's this part of the allocation here. The whole allocation you can see edged in red. So this part here provides 104 dwellings. A second phase on land adjacent to the first phase has outline planning permission, and this would deliver a further 37 dwellings, and that's this field here. We're currently considering a reserve matters application on that at the moment. The council is currently considering a reserve matters application, as I just said there on that one. The current application we're considering today would provide 133 dwellings, and that's on this part of the site here. Including the first two phases, the total number of dwellings would therefore be 274, which would exceed the number of dwellings allocated. The remainder of the allocated land is yet to come forward, but could do so in the future, and that's this parcel of land here. It's important to note that the total number of dwellings allocated in policy FPH3 is not a ceiling, and the proposal will make an important contribution toward meeting the housing needs of Falmouth and meeting the government's objective of significantly boosting the supply of homes as required by paragraph 59 of the NPPF. Now this slide shows the proposed site layout. The dwellings will be arranged in a mixture of detached and semi-detached pairs and short terraces, which helps to add variety and visual interest. The dwellings would present active frontages to the public roads and the public areas. Open spaces and car parking would all be appropriately overlooked. So we can see Hillhead Road running along here. Here's the application site, existing dwellings here, and existing development under construction down here. And we can see the dwellings here, which are the lighter coloured rectangles. Here's public open space in this part of the site. And dwellings in the southern part of the site would be set back from the road with additional planting along this boundary and additional new Cornish hedges planted along here, and that would help to reduce the visual impact of the development when viewed from Hillhead Road because of that setback and that additional planting. The existing boundaries and buffers would be reinforced and new buffers provided around the edges, and that would help to reduce visual impact in other long distance views. And importantly, we have an amendment to the scheme which has secured this tree-lined street running north-south through the development, and these additional trees planted here, once they are matured, would help to reduce visual impact of the development in longer distance views from the east, where this site is visible due to its elevated location. But as I say, this would help to reduce that visual impact together with the reinforced planting around the boundaries. The affordable homes would be appropriately distributed across the site. There'll be 47 affordable homes, which equates to 35% affordable housing and is policy compliant. The affordable homes will be split between 33 affordable rent and 14 shared ownership, which is in line with the required 70-30 10-year split. Each dwelling will be provided with its own private garden. There'll be appropriate separation between the proposed dwellings in the northern part of the site and the existing neighbouring dwellings to the north. That's these ones here. And together with the existing hedges, trees and reinforcement of those boundaries, there'd be no impact in terms of amenity on these neighbours. Now, turning to the issue of biodiversity net gain, following the deferral of the application, the applicant was asked to amend the scheme in order to seek to achieve the minimum 10% biodiversity net gain on site. However, the applicant has chosen not to amend the scheme. As explained in the main reports, the scheme would achieve a 6.65% net gain on site, and this would be secured through the imposition of planning conditions. Because the development is not achieving the required 10% biodiversity net gain on site, the applicant instead offers a financial contribution for biodiversity offsetting off-site, which would make up the shortfall in on-site biodiversity units. This approach accords with policy 23 of the Cornwall local plan, which requires developments to enhance biodiversity interests and requires that they should enable net gains. It does not state the biodiversity net gain must be provided, does not state a minimum amount, and does not require it to be provided on site. In light of this policy position, it's your officer's opinion that we're not able to insist on the scheme providing the full 10% biodiversity net gain on site. The application is therefore considered to be in accordance with policy 23 of the local plan. The next two slides show a selection of elevations of some of the various house types that are proposed. The design and appearance of the dwellings is traditional. To some extent, it seeks to reflect local vernacular, including that found in the Eve Park development, which is currently under construction to the south, in terms of its form, style, and appearance. There are a variety of house types to help to add visual interest across the development, The palette of material finishes would include rough cast render, natural stone, slate tile, hanging, and warm golden buff brick. Roofs would be covered in dark grey slate effect tiles with terracotta or grey ridge tiles. The design appearance of the dwellings is considered to be appropriate in this context. That's some of the other house types there. Now, this slide shows a sample street scenes and gives an indication of what the development would look like. Now, this slide shows the proposed site access. A new vehicular and pedestrian access will be formed onto Hillhead Road in this position here. So we have Hillhead Road running along here, Kagelyak Road here. There's the proposed development. This is the existing Eve Park development under construction here. So the formation of the access would require the removal of a length of existing hedge along the southern boundary in order to provide the visibility displays, and that's along this length here. New Cornish hedges will be provided to replace what will be lost and to reinforce local distinctiveness. And then a new pedestrian footway will be provided along part of the site frontage, linking the access with the new crossing point on Hillhead Road. So the new footway will be along here, a new crossing point in this position here. This would allow access to another new pedestrian footway on the south side of Hillhead Road, which runs along here on the verge there, which in turn would connect with a new footway to be provided on Kagelyak Road, which is shown in the following slide. Upon completion of the Eve Park development to the south, there will be an alternative pedestrian route into Falmouth through that development. So people could leave here, cross here, and then come down through this development once it's completed. Now, this slide shows the proposed off-site footway improvements on Kagelyak Road. So here we have the junction with Hillhead Road here, Kagelyak Road here. This would involve the provision of a new footway on the south side of Kagelyak Road, which will connect with the existing footway further down the road. So we have a new section of footway in the carriageway here, connecting with the existing footway here. This would ensure that there's safe pedestrian access provided to link the development with the existing pedestrian infrastructure and thereby allow safe access into Falmouth. So the provision of the new footway on the south side of Kagelyak Road would result in the narrowing of the carriageway for a length of approximately 60 metres. This would require the introduction of informal priority working to allow vehicles to pass along this stretch of road because the carriageway will be narrowed. There would also be other alterations to the junction of Kagelyak Road with Hillhead Road in order to slow traffic on approach to the priority working. Now, it's not possible to provide a continuous footway connection into Penryn along Hillhead Road because there's insufficient width available along much of Hillhead Road to provide a footway and because the necessary land is not within the applicant's control. The Highways Officer has no objections to the proposed access arrangements and considers that the local road network is capable of accommodating the extra traffic generated without resulting in undue operational or safety problems. Now, with regard to the impacts of development upon the wider highway network, following the deferral of the application, the applicant's highways consultants have provided a technical note explaining that the existing road junctions in the locality have sufficient capacity to cater for the increased traffic generated by the proposed development. And this is detailed in the highway and access issues section of the committee report. Now, it's important to note that the Falmouth and Penryn transport strategy sets out how the cumulative highway impacts of the various proposed developments in Falmouth and Penryn, which includes this current scheme, would be addressed. The various measures in the strategy include junction improvements, bus improvements, rail improvements, a town-wide walking and cycling network, and publicity and promotion of sustainable transport options. A number of these measures have already been completed, including improvements at Trellodswell, Union Corner and Kernick roundabouts. The applicant would pay the required financial contribution towards the Falmouth and Penryn transport strategy, and this contribution would be used towards the provision of sustainable transport measures in the vicinity of development as set out in the strategy. The proposed development is considered to ensure a safe and suitable means of access that would be provided and would not cause a significant adverse impact on the local road network, including taking into account the cumulative impacts of future growth. The application is considered to accord with policy 27 of the Cornwall local plan, and subject to the payment of the above financial contribution towards sustainable transport improvements meets the objectives of the transport strategy for the area. I'll quickly run through a few photos of the site. This is looking north across the site, taken from a corner of the site looking towards the residential development to the north. This is the northern site boundary. You can see the existing dwellings beyond that there. These boundaries will be retained and further reinforced, and there's adequate separation distance between the proposed dwellings and the existing neighbours, so there'll be no impact upon amenity. Now this shows, the top photo there shows Hillhead Road looking northeast. So the new footway will be provided along this frontage here, with a crossing point approximately in this position here. This is looking towards the Kagelyak junction down there. And the bottom photo shows Hillhead Road looking to the southwest in the opposite direction. So this section of hedge will be removed. The access will be provided potentially approximately in this location here, and the hedge will be removed in order to provide the visibility display. The new Cornish hedgerows will be provided within the site to compensate for that loss. And here we have the Kagelyak Road junction with Hillhead Road. A new footway will be connecting down here along the verge, and then we have looking down Kagelyak Road here, looking to the east, looking to the west, and the new footway will be provided in the carriageway here, which would result in a narrowing of the carriageway along this stretch, and that would then link in with this existing footway here. So that provides a direct pedestrian connection into Falmouth. Now, members will see from the update sheet that we've received one additional objection from a member of the public, but it doesn't raise any new issues that are not already addressed in the main report. So that brings us on to the balance of the considerations and conclusion. So the site forms part of a larger allocation for residential development in the site allocations DPD to meet the housing needs of Falmouth set out in the local plan, and has therefore previously been assessed and found suitable for residential development in principle. The layout, scale, appearance and landscaping of the development is considered to be good quality, and the scheme will be appropriate in terms of the character of the area and will ensure that any visual and landscape impact will be minimised. The means of access is considered to be acceptable, and the increased traffic movements associated with the development will be able to be accommodated by the local highway network without resulting in undue operational or safety issues, and proposed off-site highway works will ensure safe and suitable pedestrian access will be provided. The affordable homes and on-site public open space provision meet the requirements of the planning policies and are important public benefits of the scheme. Financial contributions will be provided towards education infrastructure, health infrastructure, transport infrastructure, and towards mitigating recreational impacts upon the Fal and Helford SAC in accordance with the requirements of the development plan. There'll be no material adverse impacts upon the amenities of either existing nearby residential occupiers, land uses, or prospective occupiers of the dwellings. Development will result in the loss of a small amount of agricultural land, and any adverse impacts upon ecology will be mitigated and a biodiversity net gain would be achieved. However, the on-site biodiversity net gain is less than the 10% requirement in the council's DPD, but this will be overcome through a shortfall, through a net gain, through a provision of a financial contribution towards compensatory biodiversity units on separate lands of the application site. So finally, the application is recommended for approval, subject to signing of the Section 106 planning obligation and subject to conditions. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, thank you, Mark, for a very detailed report. So we now go on to speakers, and the first speaker on my list is Councillor Alan Jewell of Falmouth Town Council. Are you there, Alan?
Good morning. Yes, can you hear me there?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. The usual format, Alan, which I'm sure you're aware of, it'll be 3 minutes, and we'll remind you when it's 30 seconds to go. So when you're ready.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Chairman and fellow members of the committee. I spoke in November on this application, and some stuff was brought up which I didn't think was, which is now relevant to this application in regards to the overall impact of the development in the area. The officer, Mr. Bull, mentioned PA 1802967, the Ocean Housing Development adjacent to Barrett's, and we as a town council were never consulted on this application. And if we had been consulted, we would definitely have thrown up the objection in regards to the access which is being approved, which is now accumulating in another access for this development now. It seemed to slip through the net. We should have been consulted. And Bureau Parish were consulted. I'm not sure if the ward member was consulted. This definitely needs further consideration because we always thought that the access was be coming off the main road. Now we're having a piece of footpath put onto this highway, which is going to impact on the infrastructure of the area, which I said at the previous meeting. I mean, like I said, it's a premature development. I mean, we got to 2030 for these houses to be built, but the infrastructure just isn't there. And as Mr. Bull said, they have got a pedestrian access down through Eve Park, so they don't have to have this footpath on the Kagelyak Road, because I tell you now, that road is going to be chaos if that footpath is put in. I do not accept the findings of the highways officer, and the town committee are completely behind us on this. You know, that the impact on the road infrastructure is going to be, well, it's going to be chaos because you've got some big industrial employers, you've got West Country Fruits, you've got OTS buses that are based up in Treverva and Lamanva, and they haven't been consulted in regards to this road layout. I mean, the feedback we've had since that meeting has come from the developers themselves, highways team. So I just think it's a premature application until the road structure is put in place, this development will cause chaos in the area. And I think really you just got to really think about what you're doing here, because otherwise it's shutting the door after the horse is bolted. It needs to go back to have a proper in-depth look at the highways area. The houses are you know, they aren't nothing inspiring. I mean, they aren't prepared to put the 10% on the site. They're going to do an off-site contribution, which is a shame. The trees they're going to plant up through the middle of the site, they'll take forever to grow, because as we all know, it's a very exposed site. So I'd just like to say to you, committee members, really think hard. It's the infrastructure. We need to get that in place before the houses are built. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Alan. Any of the members got a question for Councillor Jewell?
Councillor Nicholas, Chairman.
Yeah. Over to you, Sue.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, just one question. Do you know, or have your, the councillors and the council had any discussions with the area highways manager about this?
Sue, well, not really, to be truthful, we haven't. And we didn't, like I said earlier, we were not consulted at all on the ocean housing development, which is the 37 houses adjacent to the Barrett's development. And if you look on the plan, hopefully Councillor Bastion will bring it up, but the layout of the Barrett's development, which has already been completed, clearly showed an access point to this ocean housing, which they could have used existing Barrett access instead of making another one, which this has caused the pedestrian footpath on that Kagelyak road, which is chaos. It will be chaos. I do not accept that the findings of the highways officer.
And also, just to clarify, this bit of footpath that they put on it eventually just goes away to nothing and you're walking on a narrow road again.
No, it does join into Oakland Park.
Right.
So it's only 60 metres, but that 60 metres is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you. Are there any further questions, David?
No, Chairman.
No, right, thank you. Right, thank you, Alan, for joining this morning's meeting. Thank you very much. And so we now go on to the next speaker, which that's Councillor Malcolm Bennett from Biodiversity Parish. Are you there, Councillor Bennett?
I am, Chairman. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Normal format, you'll have 3 minutes. We'll remind you when it's 30 seconds to go, and your time will start from when you start talking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning. To start with, Biodiversity Parish Council has no problems with the Penryn site layout. What we are concerned with is the highways proposals. On all the applications in this area, Biodiversity Parish Council have consistently raised the issue of traffic management in this area. Hillhead Road and Kagelyak Road present traffic speed problems, pedestrian safety, and what has been talked about by the previous speaker, congestion. We were led to believe in November that highways would rethink and come back with a revised scheme. Clearly that is not the case. There are 3 major developments in close proximity to each other, and considering the length of time they have been in the planning stage, highways could have produced a scheme for the area, rather than each application having to mitigate for its own impact. This is a missed opportunity. The main focus of our argument is on the Hillhead Road, Kagelyak Road, and the proposed footpath. In the Stantec report, Informal Priority Working, it says at the western end of Kagelyak Road, near Hillhead, it is proposed to provide a pavement 1.8 metres wide by reducing the road to 3.5 metres, 11'6" for those of you who like imperial, and continuing for 50 metres or 166 feet. Where do vehicles in Kagelyak Road travelling in a westerly direction wait? It is also stated in the report that it should take 5.5 seconds to negotiate this 50-metre section. Assuming there are no oncoming vehicles, that says that in the report, and these are no more than assumptions. It is bad enough now. These proposals will create a bottleneck. We urge the committee to reject this proposal and to investigate the alternatives. As there is no suitable alternative for large vehicles, they all use this route, as is previously stated by Alan Jewell. Highways has to investigate setting back the hedgerow where the pavement is proposed, and we would like to know, have they done that? We urge the committee to request that Highways investigate this possible solution. Thank you, Chairman. That's my statement.
Right, thank you, Councillor Bennett. If you can just hang on a moment, we'll see if any of the members have got any questions. Are there any, David?
Nicholas still has her hand up. I'm not sure whether that's a legacy hand or not.
Is that from your previous
legacy hand, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Are there any other hands up, David?
No.
No.
No others.
Well, thank you very much for attending the meeting this morning, Councillor Bennett. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Next speaker, it's Councillor John Langan from Penryn Council. Are you there, Councillor Langan?
Chairman, it's Angela Saunders, the committee's clerk. Councillor Langan was on the call, but he's left, and I've tried calling him twice, and there's no answer on his telephone.
Yeah. What do you suggest we carry on?
I suggest you go on to Mr. Garner. I'll
Yeah.
try and ring Councillor Langan again, but obviously if I can't get hold of him, then he'll have to forfeit his opportunity to speak. Could I just say that Mr. Garner is on mute at the moment, and if you can hear me, Mr. Garner, you need to press *6 on your telephone keypad to unmute yourself.
Good morning, Mr. Garner. Can you hear me?
Hello, yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, but we can hear you loud and clear now. It'll be the usual format. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. We'll mind you when you've got 30 seconds to go, and your time will start from when you start speaking. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairman, members. My name is John Garner. I'm the Managing Director of GE Consulting. I'm speaking to you on behalf of my client on the enclosed application, which is again recommended for approval. I'm a Bachelor of Science and a full member of the Chartered Institute of Ecology and Environmental Management with over 8 years of experience in my current role. I will comment on the ecology, one of the reasons for deferral, but I will also touch on the highways aspect, where my client has appointed Stantec to advise them, a firm of international standing with extensive experience of working in this field. Dealing with the ecology, I can confirm the submission has been made following extensive engagement with your professional officers and experts, and that it is in accordance with the emerging policy on biodiversity net gain. My client takes this issue seriously, as we know you do as a council, and as such, my client is providing full compliance with your emerging policy, which is over and above the national position. Importantly, this is an emerging policy, but through the provision of on-site net gains combined with the previously agreed contribution, the scheme is fully compliant. If this emerging policy was not applied, the scheme would not be noticeably worse off and would still meet national policy. However, no corners have been cut, views taken. This is a binary compliance calculation using the government's applied metric. Again, this is an emerging policy and not one adopted through the local plan. I'm confident the agreement reached with your professional officer and the proposed submission fully accords with the emerging policy and is robust and agreed without deviation. If challenged, I am comfortable to defend my client and indeed accept that your officer is in parallel applying the rules you as a council apply in this emerging policy. In turning to the highways issue, the comments raised were perceived to be directly aimed at your professional officer, Hugh Gibbon, and as such we will defer to his conclusion, which is to maintain support. However, Stantec share the outcome reached, that the impact of this development does not result in an unacceptable impact on the local highway network. In fact, given likely reductions in background traffic in a post-COVID world, the assessment could now represent a worst-case estimation of the impacts. Barrett's take highways impact seriously, but again, the assessment undertaken and information provided is fully policy compliant. Barrett's and your officer are not implying generic views. They are expert opinion and factual conclusions reached after detailed considerations of the site-specific context. In agreement with Hugh, Stantec have provided a further technical note that supports the position reached with your officer. I can confirm that Stantec, like myself, are comfortable as experts that the conclusions reached are sound and defendable to a third party. I can also confirm that a reduction of the speed limit will be made and is agreed in principle. Any construction traffic management plan can have the reasonable involvement of both the ward member and the parish council. In summary, this application has no other issues or concerns, reflects agreed professional officer direction, is policy compliant, and as identified by the planning officer and highways officer, is recommended for approval. And for that, we politely ask that you endorse this recommendation. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Mr. Garner. If you could just hang on just to see if any of the members have got any questions. Are there any, David?
No, Chairman.
No, right, okay. Well, thank you very much for attending the meeting this morning, Mr. Garner.
Chairman, it's Angela Saunders. I can confirm I've tried to call Councillor Langan again and there is still no response.
No, okay then, right, so we go on then next to the electoral division member, which is Councillor Bastin. Can you hear me, John?
Yeah, good morning, Chair. Yes. Thank you. Can I just start by reminding the committee why I brought this to committee in the first place, and it was to underline the complete lack of joined up thinking re strategic provision of highway infrastructure to 3 very close developments on a rural road in Kagelyak. When I left the meeting in November, I was full of hope that at last incremental planning had given way to a more logical review of the impact 3 developments would have a potential of 450 plus houses on a rural road and the adjacent junction. Sadly, when I reviewed the paperwork for today's meeting, I could see this had not happened. I can also add to that that at the same time, none of the local members were consulted either. We have been given a loose rehash of what we had before with no clear overview of how the problems that have been identified by local members could be neutralised or mitigated. Can I draw members' attention to page 39, para 77, where the Cornwall Local Plan Policy 27, halfway down it says that the development should not cause a significant adverse impact on the local road network that cannot be managed or mitigated. Despite the whole committee's request for evidence last time, I can find no evidence at all that mitigation has been shown. There are many traffic problems in this area, problems that need to be looked at with great care if total traffic chaos is to be avoided. Within the timescale that we've had between November and now, I don't think it was long enough for that really deep investigation to take place. For example, there is the same plan to narrow Kagelyak Road to 3.5 metres and for a length of 60 metres, even though it will have a detrimental effect on access permission already granted to ocean housing. As I reported at the last meeting, any narrowing here will impact on the use of the road, not only by the exceptionally large lorries used by West Country Fruit, but also buses and coaches used by OTS City Bus, who both have a base, as Councillor Jewell has said, not far away from there. National coach and international coach operators also use this route to get to Treva and Glendur and Gargans, especially during the summer. This is quite a significant load of quite big buses that use this road as the only road to get to the outer lying areas where the 2 gardens are. And I can find no evidence that these operators have been consulted. Again, as Councillor Jewell said, indeed, I was contacted on Saturday by the owner of OTS who expressed complete dismay that he'd not been consulted, bearing in mind the impact that this would have on his business. And if I can give you a scenario, I don't know, Mark, whether, sorry, Chair, can I just ask Mark to put up a slide for me?
If it's possible.
Yeah, Mark, can you put up the one with the footway on Kagelyak, please?
Yes, bear with me one moment. Should come up shortly.
Thank you. Yes, that's the one. Now, if you look, the footway to the south has considerably narrowed that road, and should you have 2 large vehicles coming face to face, one from Middlehead and one from the roundabout at Union Corner, and within seconds you're going to have several vehicles building up behind them, and those big vehicles will have no chance to reverse, and that was the concern given to me by the owner of OTS. And you can see that by putting that pavement through there, you are actually going to reduce that road width to literally almost, the width of a car. At present, it's difficult to get 2 cars through there, but with the footway there, it's going to be even worse. Much has been made of this being part of the DPD, which at the time I said I objected to, but sadly the DPD makes no assessment of the rural lane infrastructure at the site. So it's almost as though somebody has said, oh, there's a good open patch, we'll use that, but they haven't thought how you get to it or how you get away from it. And I am also still very dissatisfied with the efforts to get pedestrians into Penryn. Penryn is the nearest town and it's been dismissed in one sentence on page 41-42. I'm sure that a footpath inside the coastline development could be agreed to the benefit of all. And that's really where I'm saying about let's have some sort of lateral thinking here. Let's have some thought. We're saying, well, okay, we can't run one down the road, but coastline have got an application in. We can run a footpath down the inside hedge. I don't quite know why so much is made of getting pedestrians into paths.
Yeah, if I could ask you to wind up or start winding up.
Yeah, 2 minutes. Finally, paragraph 43, sorry, page 43, paragraph 93 states that Highways team are happy with everything meets the needs of policy 27. Not only now, but even with future development. If you remember, Mark said there was potential to build out even more on this. As I've already stated, I can find no real evidence put forward to support this statement and would ask members to refuse this application on the grounds that the full requirements of policy 27 have not yet been met. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you, John. Are there any questions for Councillor Bastin? David?
No, can't see any, Chairman.
No, okay, right, with that we go on to Councillor David Stormby, who's the adjoining member. Can you hear me, David?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Can hear you loud and clear. Good morning.
Yes.
Usual format. Okay. It'll be 5 minutes when you start, and sort of after that, we'd ask you to start to wind up. So, you know, when you're ready, David.
Okay, thank you very much. Won't be 5 minutes. Thank you very much. Yes, good morning, Chairman and committee members. I'm here this morning to voice my concerns with this development on Kagelyak Road and its impact on the area. When Barratt Homes got permission for their estate at Union Corner, Councillors Baskin, Jewell and myself thought long and hard to have the access coming directly off the new Union Corner roundabout. But sadly, without any success. Instead, they gained access 50 metres up Kagelyak Road. When we were reassured that any further development north on the adjoining site, which is now the Ocean Housing Development, would use the existing Barratt's access further down the road. Again, this did not happen. And now we have another entrance further up Kagelyak Road, which again is not desirable. And to top it all, we have this new development on the other side of the road, which I feel is the straw that breaks the camel's back to restrict the free flow of traffic. The comments as written by the highways officer is not a positive one for this application and are very flippant, saying that the extra traffic generated from this development will have to sort itself out, which in my view will only add problems to the current traffic flows coming into Falmouth and Penryn on these very narrow roads from the outlying areas of Constantine to Verba, Morland Smith and Gweek. I believe that until an integrated traffic scheme which ties up all these developments has been seriously looked at, which will soon be part of Falmouth under the new Budok and Truscabase division, I urge you members to refuse this application. This site is on the DPD development plan, which runs until 2030, and this is a premature application. In my mind, we have got to get the road network right first before the houses, and not the other way around as in this application. It's a strong case of putting the cart before the horse. So I ask members not to make a big mistake by granting plan permission before the road infrastructure has been improved to cope with the additional traffic in this area. Please use common sense and refuse this application as it stands. I would also like to add that last time I spoke to this committee on highways issues, when I challenged the highways of the design of the new Union Corner roundabout by saying they had the road priorities wrong by having one lane coming out of Falmouth and 2 lanes coming in. It was Mark Kagelyak who said we should be listening to the local member on this issue. You did listen, and the road layout was changed around, and the Union Corner roundabout now works beautifully. So I hope this committee are listening again to the local members regarding this application. Please refuse this application. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Right, thank you, David. Are there, or has any member got a question for Councillor Sawnby?
No, Chairman.
No, okay. Right, thank you very much, David. So with that, we go on to the question. Any questions for the officers? Anybody on the committee got any questions for the officers?
Councillor John Martin.
Yeah, okay. Right, over to you, John, first.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask Mark, the land, that last illustration you showed us of the junction, the land on the north of that, which is planned for development, was it mentioned that we have no permissions or leeway to cut into that bank, the other side, to create a two-lane traffic way there?
Thank you. There is permission, there's outline planning permission for developments to the north. To my understanding is there's no proposal to remove any of that hedge bank along there, but there are proposals as part of that scheme to provide a safe and suitable access, which would also involve the narrowing of the carriageway. So the principle of the narrowing of the Kagelyak road in that area to provide a footway has already been established, but we're at a point now where I don't believe it would be possible to use land within that site. It's not within the applicant's control for a start. It's in another landowner's control. But as I say, the principle has already been established for the narrowing of Kagelyak Road at that point.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, right. David, have you got any further questions?
Yes, Sue Nicholas, Chair.
Yeah. Right, Sue.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we raised major concerns about this development and the access onto the highways at the last meeting. And I also asked if the area highways manager had actually been part of the discussions, and I don't see in the report that that has been done. I've seen that we had a discussion with the road safety audit team, and they were saying that the off-site highways works are considered deliverable. It doesn't say anything about the main infrastructure of the roadways in the area. So have we had a report from the Cormac Highways manager for the area?
Yeah, Matt, can you answer that one, or do you want to delegate it?
I read it's probably one for the highway officer.
Yeah, is it?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've spoken to the highway manager in the area, Viv Bidgood, and outlined the situation, and yes, he's content that there's adequate space to allow for queuing. The report has outlined there's 26 space for 26 cars. Obviously that would be let out. If it was buses, it would be less amount of cars and spaces, but there's quite a few down on the way down to the Union Corner roundabout, and it would have a traffic calming effect. You know, in a perfect world, we would have we wouldn't have any impact on the free flow of traffic. But yes, I have spoken to the highway manager who accepts the position.
I still would like to see a written report from him, not just a discussion about a conversation. And the other issue is that if we're building 100 and, well, sounds like 200 and odd houses altogether, given that most households have 2 cars now, I would think that the impact on the area is going to be quite significant, especially if you're narrowing the road. Have you looked at considering that rather than just a 14% increase?
So we have traffic numbers recorded in Cornwall where it's based on surveys. I mean, this is based on private houses rather than affordable, but we have about, in the peak hour in the morning, about 0.6 vehicles, two-way vehicles. So that works out at, for this development, 80 trips in the AM peak, and then slightly higher in the PM peak, which is about 93 two-way trips. So that's what's been, well, that's our figure, that's our Cornwall Council figures or basis, but they've used slightly higher figures in their report when they've looked at the cumulative impact. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
David, have you got any further
yes,
speakers?
Mark Kaczmarek.
Yeah, over to you, Mark.
Yes, thank you, and not to disappoint the local members again. Highways seems to be the thing that's coming through on this. You know, I'm not happy with some of the design. We have quarries nearby and they're using brick. So, but you know, if we're signed up for climate change, the climate change emergency, we should be using more local materials on the buildings. The other thing that's in the report is the lack of use of renewable energy sources like solar panels, and how is this estate going to be heated in the future? Huge things are happening now in the building industry to resolve global warming, so maybe something more could be put in there. But the main thing is highways, and if you restrict the highway, you will have problems, and the local members know it, and I think we need to make sure this is addressed in the early stages before this is developed, because it will cause problems.
Yeah, Matt, do you want to take that question, or do you want to delegate it?
Well, maybe I could come in here because a lot's being made about the works that were required through the coastline planning approval from a couple of years ago. That seems to be the thing that's highlighted as the main issue in the highway network locally. I know there's other ones that have been raised as well, but that seems to be the main one. It's not this planning application that's before you, which is making that highway prioritisation works. It's a planning approval that's already gone in. So really you need to identify what the harm is of this development. And obviously that's not part of that. So just be aware of that, really. That's probably the main point I'd bring forward. It's the coastline scheme. I think it's condition 4 in there that requires that prioritisation works to go in. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Mark raised some questions on climate change and various other issues. I don't know whether you can answer those, or do you want to delegate it to Mark?
Well, no, I mean, again, these always get raised, these issues about solar panels and the like. Really, we're not in a policy position to insist on these schemes having those solar panels put in place. I mean, our main route for tackling this at this present time is really having that thermal efficiency of the buildings themselves. And again, I hear Mark's comments about using local materials, and obviously we do try and do that and negotiate that as much as possible, but there are again limitations on what we can insist upon from a developer.
Right, thank you. David, next speaker.
Yep, I have John Bastin.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, not speaker, question, sorry. Over to you, John.
Right, thank you, Chair. It's just a question for Hugh, really. My gridlock scenario I mentioned earlier on, would you agree that could happen?
Could you answer that, Hugh, please?
Sorry, which scenario is that?
Well, what I mentioned is if you had two vehicles in the restriction area, face to face, and then very rapidly vehicles built up behind them, there would be no room to reverse, and that would result in complete gridlock in that area. I'm just asking really whether you consider that as a possibility.
I would suggest it's unlikely that a vehicle would proceed at exactly the same time as another vehicle proceeding. I think it's likely that the idea of having an informal priority is that one vehicle would concede and allow the other vehicle through. I think it's unlikely that two cars would or two vehicles would be going exactly the same time. There's forward visibility to ensure that they would see whether the vehicle is already proceeding. So I think it's unlikely.
Well, I'm very impressed by your view of public altruism. I must say, you see it all the time. People rush up through these pinch points and then they're face to face. So sorry, Hugh, but I disagree with you.
Right, thank you. David, have you got any further questions?
Yeah, Joyce Duffin, Chair.
Yeah, over to you, Joyce.
Thank you. I'm a bit disappointed really that this was deferred to look at the highways issues, and I don't think, from what I can gather, the local members being contacted at all. What I would like to see is the highways officer and the local highways officer, the local members, the parish council representatives all get together, discuss which bit comes from which planning application, what's already been agreed, what can be changed, what can't be, just everything explained, because we've just come back to exactly the same position that we were at the last planning committee, where nobody agrees with anybody, and as committee members that don't live in the local area, we can't get involved in that conversation, and you're literally hearing two different scenarios and views from different people. I think this needs to be deferred. People locally need to go away, talk about it, understand the situation, and then come back with something rather than different viewpoints that the rest of us have absolutely no way of deciding what we can agree on or not. It just doesn't seem to have stepped forward at all since the last deferment.
Yeah, we need to put that into question, Joyce. Do you want to put that to Matt to see if there is a way forward? Or...
Thank you, Chair. My question would be, if this gets deferred, could officers please meet with the local members and actually have this discussion so that people understand where they are with this application? The point being made that some of it's already been decided in a previous application would be a great starting point, and then people could understand what they could influence and what they couldn't. But could we please do that with the local members, so when it comes back to West Planning Committee, we can have a much better conversation about what is possible and isn't? Is that a possibility to do that?
There's two points probably I can answer here. I have written to the local ward members and the town councils explaining the position as to what has been approved previously, i.e. the coastline scheme's been approved, as I've just mentioned, and that prioritisation works related to that, that's already been approved. Obviously, we went back to the applicant and they provided further transport statements, which were assessed by our transportation people, and they considered the mitigation they're proposing to the junction and their access point is acceptable. I would also then go on to point out that the applicants put us on notice that they will go to appeal against non-determination should you not make a decision today as a committee. So really, there's not really a chance for further deferral. I think you will have to make a decision based on what you've got before you and the advice the various officers are giving to you. Thank you.
Thank you. David, the next speaker, questions I found.
Yes, Mike Thomas, Chair.
Yeah. Right, over to you, Mike. Question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair Roger. Yeah, when I got the agenda, I had to check whether it was a rerun of the previous one. I had to check whether it was the same. It seemed to me all the same stuff that we had again, and I'm very disappointed. I fully reflect the views of Councillor Bastin and Councillor Duffin in terms of the questions they raise. And I know the area very well. I go there quite frequently, and I think the local members are absolutely correct in raising these questions. So my question is a very simple one. How have we got to this situation? When Coastline were applying for their application, did nobody think ahead and think, well, what happens further down the road, literally down the road, should further land? Was it part of a framework discussion some 10, 12, 15 years ago? So my question is simple. Did nobody see this coming?
Matt?
But at the time when that application was dealt with, obviously the allocations DPD would have been around, so they would have known there's further allocations onward. And for the same reason that highways don't have a problem now, I guess they didn't have a problem then in terms of prioritising pedestrians along that area and pinching that part of the road. So yes, I would have thought it was thought of at that time, and they didn't consider that these works in Kagelyak Road from the coastline development would prejudice or prevent the allocations coming forward.
I'm just can't understand. Did nobody think ahead in terms of increase of traffic? I mean, we all have.
As I say, yes, they did, but they didn't consider it to be a problem.
All the government evidence shows that people, whether they're using combustion engines or electric cars, all the evidence shows that people would be using private vehicles. I just don't understand that nobody didn't think that far ahead.
But as I say, I think they did, but they'd rather prioritise the pedestrian movements.
Next speaker, David, then. Thank you.
I see Ben Kernow wants to speak to you. I don't know if you want him in now. Or...
Was it something you want to come in on relevant to the last speaker, Ben?
Yeah, I think so, Chair. Yeah, thank you. I was just, I think Matt Stevenson has, hopefully helped members. I just wanted to add my view. So, to me, this is very similar. We've had this in the past, haven't we? Where we've had members have had highways concerns. They haven't been shared by your expert officer, and you need to remember that the problem is, well, not the problem, but the fact is that Mr. Gibbon, Hugh Gibbon, is your highways expert. He's the expert, isn't he? If we go to an inquiry, but he's satisfied, and we all know that highways safety and policy 27 is very difficult to deal with. If he's saying there's no problem, I'm just thinking ahead to any appeal would be in great difficulty. And I think also Mr. Stevenson has helped us, because I was actually going to suggest that the applicant is probably going to go down the non-determination route, because unfortunately these concerns were raised at the previous meeting. And I'm sympathetic, you may think that they haven't been addressed properly, but we're in the same situation basically where you're choosing to not go with the highways expert, and he's saying he hasn't got an issue. So we're in this predicament, much like I was in at Upper Chapel where we went to appeal and we had great difficulty there with the highways. So that's all I was going to say. And I think if we were to go for another deferral, as has been flagged up, we would be in difficulty, wouldn't we? And I didn't know that the applicant had put us on notice, but I'm not surprised. So that's a difficulty. All right, thanks, Chair.
Right, thank you. David, have you got any further speakers?
Yeah, so Councillor Simon.
Yeah. Over to you, John.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This leads on, this road, the Kagelyak Road leads on to Hill Head, which is in my division. I was invited along to the first presentation at when they held it at Penryn Town Hall. I did express my concerns over the amount of traffic which will be using Hillhead and Eastwood Road to get onto the Falmouth Road. There's been no consideration for this in my view. I have not been invited to speak or to say anything on the traffic concerns. The only a lot of residents in Penryn area of Hillhead have got on to me to ask about the concerns. I've passed them on to the police, but this was a few months ago, I must admit. But just lately, the police now are having a survey on the amount of traffic, speeding traffic, from Hillhead and Eastwood Road. I have not been able to get in contact with the police and ask how they are getting on, but I think John Baston's absolutely right. I mean, on that road, you've got the summertime coaches, the West Country lorries, OTS, they're all growing businesses and getting worse. And I'm sure Councillor Sonby will back me up as a driver. Right where this pavement is going is the narrowest part of that whole road. And sorry, I just feel the road is so narrow. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could just remind members, we're still in the question bit, question of officers. Everybody can have a full time to speak once we get in the committee. So are there any further questions?
Yeah,
David?
I've got Councillor John Bastin back again.
Yeah. Okay, John, as divisional member, I'll take another question. Oh, John.
No, he's gone.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
Are you there, John?
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
One day I'll get you.
We'll allow you to have another question.
Sorry. Yeah. Just very quickly for Hugh. At what point were the local members consulted about this? What I'll call the Kagelyak pinch point.
Yeah. Hugh, can you answer that one, please?
I'm not sure that it was part of the application that's become well, the Ocean have taken on So I don't know what the consultation aspects were on that plan application. So you'd have to ask the case officer for that application.
Yeah, but from a personal point of view, I can't remember it happening, and I've just wondered whether you could recall it happening, but clearly not. Thanks very much.
Thank you. David, we got any further questions?
Yeah, we have John Hurd, Chairman.
Yeah. Okay, John.
Yeah, when Councillor Malcolm Bennett of Budok Parish Council was speaking, he suggested maybe chopping off the gardens of the properties at the top of whatever the road's called, Kagelyak or whatever, and putting the pavement back so that it maintains the width of the road. Has that been considered at all by the officers, buying the gardens off those people and or buying 1.5 metres off them and widening the road the way Councillor Bennett suggested? Has that been looked at all?
Matt?
It's not part of the application, no.
But has it been looked at?
I'm not sure if the applicants looked at that or not.
Has the council looked at it?
Not that I'm aware of.
Thank you. David, we got any further questions?
Yep, Councillor Sawnby.
Yeah. Right, David, I'll let you have another question.
Yeah, just as an ex-HGV driver, I drive heavy lorries. I used to work out of Kagelyak Quarry, which is about another 100 yards further up the road from the Kagelyak junction towards to Gweek, Morland Smith. Now, as a HGV driver, I know by reducing that width, you're going to have problems if two HGV lorries meet head on. Because I know before, when driving my lorries, to get by two heavy HGVs to pass each other on that strip of road, like it is now, you sometimes had to pull your wing mirrors in. Okay, so by reducing the width now, you're going to have massive problems because you're like the gentleman said, oh, it's highly unlikely you're going to get two HGV lorries or buses, whatever, meeting in that section of road. Yes, they will. Believe you me. It does happen, and if that does happen, one or other of those lorries have got to back up now to that junction. So you're backing around a junction, a blind junction you can't see, so and also going back down to the roundabout. I think this should be really looked into about reducing the width of this road. I'll tell you now. Thank you.
Right, I suppose the question is, Hugh, have you considered that point?
Obviously, two HGVs meeting on any of Kagelyak is going to be a challenge, and actually the road going up to Treverva and the crossroads. I mean, because it's a relatively narrow carriageway in that area before you even put a priority working in. Yeah, I think the forward visibility, it means it's unlikely that two HGVs are going to be in that same narrow section, 50-metre narrow section of carriageway, because I think they would realise that that's going to be a real big problem to get themselves out of. So I would suggest they wouldn't start down that route and risk having to reverse.
I should probably just remind committee as well, Chair, that again, that work on Kagelyak Road isn't part of this planning applications mitigation. It was another planning application that's already got approved. So you really need to draw the conversation back to the impact of this development.
Yeah, we're just on questions at the moment. So once we finish the questions, we'll remember that bit once we get into committee. Have you got any other further questions, if you don't?
Yes, Chairman. Mike Thomas.
Yeah.
If I may have a second question, Chair. This really is to Ben Kernow, our legal expert. Ben often reminds us about the simple fact that highways issues isn't something that we tend to win as a local authority on appeal. Can you confirm that highways issues have never been an issue for an appeal to be lost?
Yeah, I suppose, thanks, Councillor Thomas. I suppose what I'm saying is, well, we know from experience that when we're essentially looking at a member overturn, aren't we? And it's quite, I suppose I'm letting you into our secrets now. So if we were to look, for instance, at a landscape reason for refusal, that could be subjective, couldn't it? And there's quite a bit of what am I trying to say? Yeah, there's a scope, isn't there, for different people to have different views. What I'm saying is, I suppose with highways reasons, they're based very much on the expert view, aren't they? And the technical information that Hugh and his colleagues will have looked at, it's very difficult for us to then depart. So I'm not saying you can't, because obviously, you know, members, you can do whatever you wish. But what I'm saying is you'd be putting us in quite a difficult position costs wise, I suppose, as we have to think about that. So if I was trotting along to an appeal, and there probably would be on this, you know, we would have to get an expert then, wouldn't we? We would have to instruct somebody. We wouldn't be able to use Hugh because it would be a member over term. We're immediately on the back foot. That's what I'm saying. So I'm thinking about the tactics and the costs as well. And Upper Chapel was a good example of that. And that was about highway safety. It was about, I mean, this is quite a few years ago now, but it was a road that members considered was dangerous. It was narrow. There are similarities. So that's what, you know, that's ringing a bell to me. We have dealt with member overturns, and obviously members, you know, you can do whatever you wish. You have the power, don't you, to do that?
Yes.
But that's what I'm saying, Councillor Thomas. So Hugh is our expert. If Hugh's telling us that everything is satisfactory, he's the expert on policy 27, then we're in difficulties before we begin. But I suppose what I would say as well is, you know, we have got this threat, if you like, haven't we, of an appeal for non-determination. But I'd still rather go down that route than have a refusal at this stage. But obviously, you know, you're well aware of all of that.
Through you, Chair, can you confirm that we have never won a case though? As a
I can't remember, to be honest. We'd be in great difficulties to start with. I'd have to go back and look at them all, but we'd be in difficulties certainly.
Thank you, Mr. Curtis.
As a general principle, if we'd had various concerns about an application, we tend to shy away from highways. Obviously, in this case, the highways is the issue, isn't it?
Mr. Chair,
David, have we got any further questions, do we?
Mr. Chair, could I just clarify one question that was answered? I just want to check. The residents of Kagelyak Road have not been consulted. Is that what we heard? Can I just clarify that about the new footway that was agreed 2 years ago?
Yeah, it was part of the consultation on that planning application.
So I didn't hear that, Matt.
Sorry, I mean, that planning application would have gone through the usual publicity at that time.
Thank you.
Okay, have you any further questions, David?
No, Chairman. No other questions.
Right, well, has any of the officers got any questions or any comments they want to make? If not, we'll go into committee now, and as Matt said, if we can actually focus on this application, you know, I think we've sort of given it a fair crack in the amount of time we've had on questioning officers, etc. So, right, over to members. Anybody want to make any comments or any recommendations? First standing here is David.
Sue Nicholas is first, Chair.
Yeah. Right.
Thank
over to you, Sue.
Chair. Yeah. Firstly, I think what Joyce Duffin said was perfectly reasonable for the people to get together. I really get annoyed with people who virtually threaten a committee because if you don't decide this or the other, then we'll go to appeal. Well, that's their right. I am not convinced that there has been a comprehensive review of the highways and the problems in the whole of that area, including this site. And I would like to say that I would not support it if we don't get a proper highways view on it.
Okay, well, thank you. David, next speaker.
Councillor Graham Code.
Over to you, Graham. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. I think this is all quite simple, really. People are sort of hoping that somehow there will be deferrals so that officers can ask various questions and make the decision for us. But the decision is ours today, this morning. And we've been told that deferral is not a good idea, but and we've been told it's down to us. So Hale, which I represent, has had a significant amount of development since I went on the town council in 2007. There are several new estates. They've all been through the various processes, and in almost every case, local people and some local councillors have said, oh no, the road's dangerous, it'll never cope, we won't be able to manage. And every time the blasted traffic department has said, no, it'll be okay. But every time the blasted traffic department was right, and we've not had the predicted deaths, disaster, and so forth. We tend to forget that the average motorist is fairly intelligent, and they can usually work out the best time to go to leave their estate. They can decide how long they need for a journey. They know the risks and dangers, and they very swiftly learn the pinch points. And you know, it's working in my town. We've had hundreds and hundreds of new homes, and very little change to the actual roads, except like with this one, the roads have been narrowed to put in some pavements. So I don't think it's as bad. Probably. I mean, if he is saying it's okay, he's probably right. But it's down to us to make a decision. I'm undecided, so I won't make any proposition. But please bear in mind that we, the ordinary members, are not always right, and the experts that we employ usually are. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Graham. David, next speaker.
Joyce Duffinger.
Yeah, over to you, Joyce.
Thank you. I'm really disappointed, actually, that we've got to this stage. I would think if something is quite difficult to understand, then I think the committee should have a technical briefing on it, like Strategic do. We could have thrashed out all the highway stuff in a briefing, so that when we come to committee, we don't have this huge amount of questions. I'm really disappointed that the local member doesn't have the information about what was previous applications, what, you know, his suggestions he's still got, he's coming to committee to ask them. Well, that shouldn't be the case. I think the local members should be much more informed, and parish councillors, so that they come, they might not like it, they might still object it, but they at least understand what's part of this application and not. So I think we need to take some learning forward for next time. Then we don't have to defer something and it come back and it still not be any clearer going forward than we were last time. So I am really disappointed. Taking on board that the main issue appears to be something that has already been approved in a past application, and taking on board that our highways experts have said that they are quite happy with this. I can't see how we can do anything other than approve this going forward, but I really hope we don't get in this situation again. I think either the committee needs a technical briefing, and definitely the local members and the parish council need to understand things better. I think when there's so many applications coming forward, and obviously such a highways issue, I think we need to actually spend a bit more time thrashing things out before they come to committee. But reluctantly, I am going to propose it as laid out in the report, because I can't see what else we can do.
Right, so Councillor Duffin has proposed the recommendation as per agenda, which is for approval with the conditions. Is there a seconder for that?
None so far, Chair.
No. Right, so with that, I'll ask, have we got any further speakers?
No. Not yet.
Right. Is there an alternative recommendation that somebody would like to put forward to what Joyce has just put forward?
Mike Thomas, Chair.
Yeah. Right, over to you, Mike.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure the wording on this, but although we were told a deferment again wouldn't be appropriate, I would like to explore that as suggested by Councillor Duffin before her previous proposal, that everybody sits down and tries and works something out together. I'm not sure they're going to come up with an answer, so maybe my proposal hasn't got any real substance, but I can't see any other alternative than another deferment where some proper work is done involving all the people.
Yeah. Just before I bring anybody else in, Matt, would you like to sort of comment on that? Any suggestions on what the proposal should be?
Well, as I say, I don't feel the applicant's going to change the scheme presented. As you say, other than clarifying a few points from previously, that's all that happened. I think they were going to appeal against non-determination if you don't make a decision today. Obviously, they may not, but I think that's likely. I'm still not really clear exactly what changes you want to the scheme to make it more acceptable in the committee's view. I'm still not sure what actual changes to the mitigation that's already being proposed from this scheme is. I've heard the issues that you have with mitigation from a previously approved scheme, but I'm not sure exactly what the issues are with the transportation mitigation from this scheme. So therefore, it's obviously very difficult for officers to go away and have those further conversations to address that without knowing really what the issues are with the proposal in front of us. So if you did defer things, I think more clarity there would help.
Yeah, were the members not suggesting that that there hadn't been a wide enough consultation, or you've actually listened to local members? It seems to me that that's what they're proposing is a wider consultation.
I think that wider consultation though was on the previous approved scheme. I mean, obviously we've discussed this scheme. I've been back to various ward members and the parish councils subsequent to the last deferral, but the main issue seems to be around the consultation that was had a couple of years ago on that planning application, and really I'm not sure what scope there is really to revisit that, and certainly a deferral of this planning application wouldn't really make much difference to what further conversations we can have about that prioritisation works. Again, we can have a look at that separately, but as I said, when we were having the discussion previously, that's not part of the mitigation works proposed on this planning application.
Right, Mike, did you want to think about what proposal you wanted to make, if any, and if it's okay, I'll go on to the next speakers and I'll come back to you then.
I'd like to hear what other members have to say.
Yeah.
I think we are really trapped. I really feel trapped in this, in that there is something that has been approved, but there doesn't seem to be any connection between what was approved and the next one down the road.
Right, David, have we got any further speakers?
Yep, Dave Biggs, Chair.
Yeah, Dave, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. Again, like other members, I'm extremely disappointed that we've really made no progress on this application. It looks like everybody's kind of dug their heels in and said we weren't going to move forward very much on it. I feel that if this had been Landgarth, we would have spent several meetings and spent a lot of time and money on understanding the full impact of the overall schemes in the area, and that certainly hasn't happened here in Falmouth Penryn. Councillor Code made an interesting comment about Hale. I remember an application for a supermarket in Hale which impacted the Logan's Moor roundabout, and as part of strategic, we were actually shown, because it was an important part of that, we were actually shown an animated an animation of how the traffic was predicted to go on that roundabout. And I feel that if everybody was so confident about this, we could have actually done something like that as well, to include local members and local and parish councils, so that everybody had a full understanding of what was going on. I think that could have been possible, but it just seems that, again, that everybody's just kind of dug their heels in. But that's been fully debated so far today. I've got another concern which hasn't been raised today, and that's the one of biodiversity. If I could draw members' attention to page 24, about paragraph 30 that our ecologists said. I think this is a pretty minimal uplift on the biodiversity. The exact words are, it's a modest gain for biodiversity. A large part of that minimal uplift, that modest uplift, is to do with vegetated gardens. Now, if you say that the largest part of a small uplift is the vegetated gardens, what we're really saying is there's virtually no biodiversity uplift on this at all. And then to say that they'll then offer a financial package to do it off-site, again, seems to me very minimalist. And I'm not sure that this issue has been taken seriously at all. So that is, aside from the traffic issue, this one is the real problem. And I'm not sure that's been properly addressed. So I'll be happy to listen to what other members have to say, but I'm not inclined to support this as it stands at the moment.
Thank you. David, next speaker.
Councillor Coe, Chairman.
Yeah, come back to you, Graham.
Yes, I'm concerned about these ideas that there needs to be more consultation and talking shops and so forth. I'm absolutely sure that if you gave it another 3 months and had a big meeting every month, that the end result would be the same as what we have now. I don't think it's going to take us any further. I think that the buck stops here with us this morning, and we either accept this application or we refuse it and take the chances of whatever happens after that. But are we refusing planning permission on this development because Cornwall Council, who've got responsibility for road transport, have not taken on the challenge? As far as I can see, if we said yes to this development today and it got built and it did cause traffic issues, it would be down to Cornwall Council to have to widen the road, whatever is necessary in the future. But this is our decision for the day. We can't duck this. Thank you.
Thank you. Got any further speakers, David?
Councillor Nicholas, Chairman, yes.
Yeah. Right, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, we keep hearing about the bits of this road aren't appropriate to this development, yet on page 39, highway access and issues, there's a whole load about how it impacts on the area around there. And I am also very disappointed that at the last meeting we asked for proper comprehensive highways reports and these haven't happened. Regarding Logansmoor roundabout and how that impacts on traffic, you'll note that actually there's so much chaos on Logansmoor roundabout at the minute that there are new plans in to sort out the problems that it's causing. I think also I was kind of like concerned about the biodiversity gain. We had an application for affordable housing, 100% affordable housing on an area in my division. And they were told that for 20 affordable houses, they had to pay 170,000. So I'm interested to know exactly what amount has been requested or required by these developers for their biodiversity offset. So I think there's a lot of issues about this, and I'm extremely disappointed that, you know, coming back to this committee, we haven't moved any further forward.
Thank you. David, have we got any further speakers?
Joyce Duffin, Chairman.
Yeah. Joyce?
Thank you. I just wanted to pick up a couple of things that Councillor Code said. The fact that, you know, we could have all these meetings and technical briefings and things and still end up at the same point in a couple of months. We could, but actually everybody would have felt on board, everybody would have felt listened to, everybody would have understood the issues. So when you actually then come to the same decision, if you do, at least you've got everybody with you. I think that's the whole point about localism, and I think we've really missed it on this one. And I absolutely agree with Councillor Biggs about Langarth. You know, this is a huge project with lots of different bits and planning applications to it. It should be dealt with properly, and I am disappointed about how this has gone forward. The other point I think was that if we do go ahead and it all goes wrong, that, well, it's up to Cornwall Council just to fix it. I mean, you know that doesn't work. First of all, the council don't have the money to do that. And secondly, I'm sure we've all got projects in our own divisions that have been built out, and then you can't actually change anything once they're built because people own houses and gardens and things. It's not an option to improve it at a later stage. So I am really disappointed with where we've got to on this one. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We got any further speakers, David?
Yes, Councillor Simons.
Yeah, Councillor Simons.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, going back to more meetings and making sure everybody's singing from the same hymn book. But I mean, I am the adjacent ward member, and I have not been consulted at all on this. And I just feel the same as Councillor Somby. I'm an XGV driver, 45 years, and I've driven along that road thousands of times, and it will be a bottleneck. And okay, so we've been told we can't really defer it because it will go to appeal. But we are the actual committee, and we've got to sort it out for our residents, especially the ward member for Budok. Is like Joyce has just said, once it's built, it's built. And if it's too bad, it's too bad. And well, that's my view. Thank you.
Thank you. David, got any further speakers?
We have Ben Kerner.
Yeah, over to you, Ben.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think obviously you can defer it if you wish to. As Matt Stevenson said, all I would urge members is that you're really clear in what you're actually asking. So you're not going to change the application. What you're actually looking for, and I think perhaps that was a problem previously, wasn't it? Perhaps we weren't that clear on what we actually wanted. So if there's anything specific, and I know obviously Councillor Thomas has put that one forward, we need to think about what we actually want. There is that threat, isn't there, if you like, of non-determination. That's the applicant's gift. They can do that if they wish. And so be it, but at least they'll be listening and they'll be seeing that we're actually deferring for the right reasons. So that's all I'd say. So we could go down that route. Often when we go down the non-determination, down the deferral route, we have this threat of a non-determination, don't we? So we can do that if you wish. And obviously it's on the table at the moment, isn't it? But we need to bottom it out and have some, clarity.
Thank you. Have we got any other speakers, David?
Mike Thomas, Chair.
Yeah, right, back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very grateful to Ben for saying that, and therefore the original proposal that I put forward for a deferral, I would say any further discussion should involve the residents of Kagelyak, the parish and town councils, and all local local members, and highways, and possibly even somebody outside of highways who's got highways expertise. I'm not suggesting for one moment that or any question of our own highways skills, but maybe more voices and brain cells looking at this.
So are you actually proposing that, Mike? Are you?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay then. We got further speakers, have we, David?
No, Chairman, but I'd like to make a comment myself, if I could.
Councillor John Thomas.
If we're happy with that.
Yeah. Well, if you like, come in, David, and then if it's John, I'll go to John afterwards. And,
Chairman, I was just going to say, I'll just second Councillor Simon's proposal. That's all. And I was going to speak as well.
Yeah, I'll come back to you in a minute, John.
All right, okay.
David.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was just going to say that sitting back and listening to all our colleagues on the committee, I also am very disappointed. I feel as though we did discuss this last time. We did put our concerns up. The local people did say what they thought. And what's basically happened is that we've been told that nothing really is able to change. And I think part of the problem and the difficulty for me is that we know that as we sit here, the actual world is moving ahead, but planning policy is way behind it. So thinking of things like biodiversity, we know we're in a climate emergency. We know we're supposed to be taking action, but we also know that planning policy actually hasn't caught up with that. So we can't do very much about it as a committee member. And that seems to sort of take the teeth away, in a sense, from the committee. We're being told that most of these elements of this have been already been approved. If that's the case, then I agree with those members who say, well, we can do very little else. But I have to say that I do feel disappointed about it. I do think that the number of the issues need to be considered, and therefore I would find it very difficult at this moment in time to to approve it, despite all that. And I tend to agree, and I would agree with Mike Thomas that more discussion needs to be taking place. The other big issue for me always is with planning. We're always told to look at the plan that's in front of us, and here's a classic case where a whole series of plans have clearly come in front of the committee, each one approved in its own right, but no one has taken a look at the overall impact of the whole development. And this is a classic, and I agree with those who say that you know, there should have been probably more briefings on it. So with all that, as I say, I would go along with Mike Thomas's suggestion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, John Thomas, Councillor John Thomas. Are you there, John?
He's got his hand up.
I was just going to second Councillor Mike Thomas's proposal. Looking at the report, as has been said before, it's almost a duplicate of what we had, you know, previously. I'm disappointed that, you know, that we've got local drivers like Councillors Solnby and John Simmons and that's actually travelled that road as haulage drivers. They know very well what that road entails and like it was as it is now. So to actually go down this route and alter that right near to that junction, it's bound to be tailbacks, and then you've got another adjoining road. So, you know, I'm just not happy with it at all. I was just going to say that I think, like Councillor Duffin said, there does need to be more around the table discussions, and for sure that Councillor John Simmons, the adjoining member, should be involved in this along with everybody else that has concerns or anything to do with it. So I'm more than happy to second a further deferment. And obviously the applicant has got the right to go to non-determination, and that's his prerogative. But he's listened to what's being said, and hopefully, you know, we'll clarify everything by having more talks. So I'm just happy to second it if Councillor Egan Smith hasn't already done it, Chairman.
Thank you. We've got any further speakers, David?
Councillor Coe, Chairman.
Yeah, over to you again, Graham.
Okay, as you know, from what I've said previously, I'm not in favour of a further deferral for many reasons. But what I would suggest is we're in the situation where we do not think the roads around this proposed development are suitable for the development to go ahead. And I would suggest, rather than a deferral, that we should refuse this development on the basis that the highway system cannot support it, and take it from there. Let them appeal against something which is going to be looked at professionally afterwards.
Yeah, could I just bring Ben in at this point, because I think previously he advised that there'd probably be a better position to have a deferral rather than a refusal. But could you come in on that, Ben?
Yeah, I'm here, Chair. Yeah, we certainly I wouldn't suggest a refusal. You know, on what basis? That's the thing, isn't it? So we've got a complete member overturn. We've got officers suggesting that everything's in order. There is a risk with non-determination. With deferral, a risk of non-determination. But I'd prefer that at this point. But obviously, it's up to members. We have dealt with this sort of thing before, and we could deal with it again. But we're just being honest and having this discussion up front. We've got to think about costs, haven't we? The risk of costs. So we would go to a full appeal. You know, there would be considerable costs. There'd be the costs of expert witnesses as well, because at the moment we don't have any. That's a big problem, isn't it? We'd have to get witnesses to go with our position. We've got no evidence at the moment, so we'd be in a really tricky position. We'd be on the back foot.
I think also, Chair, if I could just come in quickly, is remind members that this is an allocated site. Ben mentioned previous examples. They weren't allocated even. They were speculative developments prior to having a local plan. You know, these are actually allocated sites, so accessibility to these sites would have been looked at then. The allocations document would have been publicised and consulted on for quite a considerable amount of time. You know, you need to be mindful of that these allocated sites are put forward as the council's way of delivering the housing requirements in their local plan, and therefore the onus is really on delivering these sites unless you can really come forward with a clear reason of the development itself and the technical reasons from it. And I think that's the difficulty you're going to have in an appeal, being seen as being reasonable. You know, you really need to be mindful of those policies around that allocations plan. And in respect of transportation, they are quite limited. They are really just talking about pedestrian access back to Falmouth. If you look at that policy around this allocation of this site, and as you've heard, your highway expert considers the pedestrian links back to Falmouth are secured through this development and also the previous scheme from the coastline scheme. And I think that's the difficulty that we have of any further discussions or any deferral or any refusal is the policy position around this allocation. Thank you.
Yeah, right, thank you, Matt. Thing is, the only thing I've got on the table at the moment is for deferral. So if you want to give it some thought, if you wanted to change the wording or suggest to members the, you know, possibly better wording, I'll come back to you in a minute. With that, with Graham, did you actually want to propose refusal, or are you quite happy to go along and vote which way you wanted to when we get to the vote?
Yeah, I'm just against deferral because I think our choice is that we either accept this proposal or that we refuse it. Any talk about further deferrals is just kicking the can down the road. A lot of time and money will be spent between now and then perhaps 2, 3, 4 months down the road, we're going to have the same situation we're in now. I think we should be bold and make a decision today rather than a deferral. So I'll be voting against a deferral.
Yeah, right. Thank you, Graham. Right, David, have we got any further speakers?
Yes, Joyce Duffin, Chairman.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Joyce
Me.
Duffin. Sorry, right, Joyce.
Yeah, I think it was something Councillor Thomas said that raised alarm bells. It's fine to have a deferment, but I think we need to be aware that we are not going to be able to change the one bit in the road that members have most issues with, because that was done a little while ago. So please don't defer it thinking you're going to make any difference to the application that's already been approved. I think members need to be aware. I was wanting a deferment so that everybody could get round the table and look at all the issues and have a better understanding before we then have to make a decision on that, which was my point during the members' questions. The reason that I propose that we approve it as laid out is because I absolutely don't think there will be much of a change in what we approve coming the next meetings going forward, you know, when it comes back to committee. So at this moment, I think we should just approve it as it is. My issue is that I don't like the way this has been dealt with previously. I think before it gets to this stage, we need to understand the issues. We need to have a technical briefing, and all the local members and parish councils need to understand the situation better. But I think today we should be approving this.
Right, thank you. David, have you got any further speakers?
No. No. Yes, Councillor Nicholas.
Yeah. Okay. So after that, unless anything else comes up, I propose to put it to the vote. I think we've given this a good thrash. So over to you, Sue.
Yeah, just following up on this. On page 39, paragraph 77, policy 27 of the Cornwall local plan requires developments to provide safe and suitable access to the site for all people and not cause a significantly adverse impact on the local road network that cannot be managed or mitigated. And quite frankly, I haven't seen any evidence that that has been met. Just my view.
Right, thank you. Right, before I put it to vote, I'll go over to Matt. Is there any suggestion in the change of words that the proposition that Councillor Thomas has put forward? Have you any suggestions for him that might be helpful? That's the only thing I've got on the table.
It's Angela from Democratic Services as well. I'd also need a bit of clarification on the deferral.
Yeah.
My notes, thank you.
Matt, have you got any suggestions before I come back to the members?
Well, obviously the issue is the transport network in the area, isn't it? And the main issues and concerns I've heard is really to do with the prioritisation works on Kagelyak Road. So I suppose a deferral could be allowed to look at whether or not that could be amended, that scheme related to the coastline scheme, or even undone or not done at all. We could look at the possibilities around that. Although I'm aware, obviously, that their access point comes out onto that road, so presumably something needs doing at that access point. But that's the only immediate thing I could see that we could look at should it be deferred again, in terms of looking at that prioritisation works and if that can be amended and somehow the road not pinched in such a way.
Yeah, could we give a recommendation to help Councillor Thomas out?
Well, as I say, I think that's the only thing you can defer it for. I'm not particularly optimistic.
No. Well, we've its members have got to make a decision. So over to.
I mean, that's the only thing in the council's control, really, in terms of that prioritisation work requires a 278, I'm assuming, from the Highways Department to do those works. Obviously, we could have a look at that again and see whether or not that particular highway scheme can be amended in some way, which is more palatable for the locals and for this committee and the other members locally. I think that's really the only thing we possibly have some ability to revisit.
I'd be happy with that, Mr. Chair, if my seconder is happy. I would also stress the importance of actually consulting with the residents affected on that stretch of road. I think that is something that needs to be discussed in real depth.
Yeah. Right, Councillor John Thomas, are you happy to second that as well?
Yes, I am, Chairman. I don't know if Councillor Duffin was referring to my thing. What I meant was a lot of what she said was makes sense, but I do worry about the overall transport in the area, not just the one that's been approved. And I think picking it on what Matt's actually said now, I think if that arrangement can be altered, or even, like I said, not done at all, and look at further road situations or traffic calming or whatever there, then I think that's the way forward. And only time will tell, and give us time to give in with all the local members, parish councils, residents, and everybody. Yeah, and I support the proposer to defer, Chairman. Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Angela, can I just check? So it's to defer to consult about the prioritisation work on Kagelyak Road, and who are we consulting with? The local residents that have been affected? Is that local members as well?
Yes.
Yeah, anybody else?
And adjoining members, Angela, please, like John Simmons.
Yeah, Matt, could you just come back in on what you said, please, just for Angela?
Yeah, I think the only thing we can really defer it for on this particular application is to look at that reprioritisation works, and the committee would like us to reconsult, I think, with basically every interested party. So that's, town, parish councils, ward members, adjoining ward members, isn't it, and immediately affected members of the public. It gets difficult to draw a line, doesn't it, because as other members have intimated, there are businesses that use this road which are wider afield as well, so it's difficult to draw the line, isn't it, on that consultation, but we'll see what we can do to widen it as much as possible, bearing in mind the restricted nature we are in terms of face-to-face consultation and the like as well.
Yes.
All I would do is obviously urge members of the parish councils, if they have wider concerns about the transport network in this particular area and the allocations, then notwithstanding this planning application, they really need to speak to the transportation department and ask them to look at their transport strategy for Falmouth Penryn and how the 106 monies are being attributed to the area, and whether or not there's any basis for them to look at that transport strategy again and put something more specific into this area, because at the moment there is nothing in that strategy to the specific area.
Right, thank you for that. So I'm now going to put it to the vote. What you'll be voting for will be a deferment for those discussions that Matt has outlined to take place. So we'll do it by roll call. So it will actually go over to Angela to take that roll call.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just check with Ben Curnow before I take the vote? Councillor Code joined the meeting late. I'm not sure that he'll be able to vote.
No.
Yeah, I saw that, Angela. I noted Councillor Code had said that he was aware of the application, and I think it comes down to him. He's suggested that he's satisfied that he's read up and is aware of the application. Is that correct, Councillor Code?
Yes, absolutely. I remember it from the previous occasion, and I've given it a darn good read this time since the agendas arrived, and I was delayed by unavoidable circumstances. But I'm totally aware of all the arguments pro and anti, and I'm quite happy that I can vote.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy, Andrew, if you are, that he's been involved as well in the questions. He's aware of the application. I think he's able to vote.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. I just wanted to check.
Thank you. Right, over to you, Angela.
Thank you. Councillor Baston.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Baston is a divisional member, isn't he?
Oh yes, of course he is. Yeah, sorry. Councillor Biggs.
For.
Councillor Code.
Against.
Councillor Duffin.
Against.
Councillor Eakin-Smith.
For.
Councillor Harding.
For.
Councillor Hurd.
For.
Councillor Kaczmarek.
For.
Councillor Martin.
For.
Councillor Nicholas.
For.
Councillor Pascoe.
For.
Councillor Simmons.
For.
Councillor John Thomas.
For.
Councillor Mike Thomas.
For.
Thank you. I'll just count that up. That's been carried by 11 votes in favour and 2 against.
Right, thank you. So the next item is item 5, any other business that the chairman considers to be of urgency. That there is none, I'm glad to report. So I'll bring this meeting to a conclusion. Thank you for everybody for attendance and their input, and encourage everybody to stay safe. The next meeting at the moment, we've got 11 on the agenda. So if we use the same rate as we used this morning, we probably need 3 days, but hopefully that'll be cut by a few applications. But with that, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much for attending once again, and goodbye.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Safe, everyone. Happy New Year. Safe journey home.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Roger.